Hi class, welcome to week 2. This information is going to go with the part A of your detecting media bias assignment and of course with your DQs. Critical evaluation of anything, reading, listening, or viewing, is active, thoughtful examination as opposed to passive acceptance of what you read, hear, and see. The standard of judgment is in such evaluation is not how closely the author's view matches your own, but whether it is accurate and reasonable. Consequently, those who evaluate messages critically are less vulnerable to deception and manipulation than other people. Basically, that's just a fancy way of saying whether you agree with it or not, whatever you read, whatever you see, whatever you hear, you need to very, very, very carefully examine it before you accept it as truth. It will keep you from being vulnerable. It'll keep you from being easily deceived or easily manipulated. And guys, most importantly, you need to do that when you agree with something, because it's so much easier to be manipulated when you agree with what you hear. If you like what you hear, you don't want to examine it. So we're going to talk about some distinctions to make when you are reading, listening, viewing, or hearing something. The distinction between the person and the idea, between matters of taste and matters of judgment, between fact and interpretation, between literal and ironic statements, between an idea's validity and the quality of its expression, and between language and reality. Right, the first one we're going to talk about is the distinction between the person and the idea. You can look at these two presidents. Most everybody has probably some strong reactions to them. Either they really, really liked them or they really, really disliked them, one or the other. Regardless of whether you really like or dislike somebody or some group, you need to suspend that judgment, push out your bias, and make sure that you fairly and accurately listen to and critique the idea. For instance, let's take our current President Obama. If you really, really like him, you may be more likely to accept anything he says and not really dig and make sure and critique to make sure that everything that is being said is what you can 100% rely on. If you dislike President Obama, which in this country we have the right to do that, then you may be quick to say whatever he does or says is I'm not going to deal with it. Well, you can't do that either. You need to push aside your bias and listen to what the idea is and carefully, fairly critique it. Now, guys, be very, very careful with these. People, we tend to do this all the time. If we like what we hear or we like the person saying it, we don't tend to make the distinction. We say, oh, I like that person, so their idea is going to be great. Or I dislike that person, so their idea is going to be horrible. With presidents, with anybody, nobody's all good and nobody's all bad, right? No president is going to make every decision a good decision, nor is every decision they make a bad decision. So keep your eye out for that. Remember, this is in your thinking, not pointing it out in others, but in you. Matters of taste and matters of judgment. A great example of this, there's some kids here and they have school uniforms on. My students, when I taught public school, by matter of taste, did not want to wear their school uniforms. But by matter of judgment, we as adults presented them even with the factual information that showed that, correlationally at least, just about any school that implemented school uniforms for the kids had drastically reduced numbers in things like fighting and bullying and classroom disruption. So by matter of taste, you may not want it, but by matter of judgment, it might be the best thing for you. Or vice versa. By matter of taste, you may not like it at all, but by matter of by matter of taste, you may love it, but by matter of judgment, you may not want to deal with it or take on whatever the idea is. So watch out for that. Distinction between fact and interpretation. Basically, guys, you can make facts, you can interpret them any way that you want. So you've got to really get behind the research that came up with the facts. Here in North Carolina, they've taken away a pay scale up, I guess you'd say, for master's degrees. Normally, if you make a master's, or if you make bachelor's, you make a certain amount. You make a little bit more for master's and a little bit more for doctorate. Well, North Carolina said basically paying teachers is the equivalent of paying them paying teachers based on master's degrees is equivalent to paying them based on hair color, which is ridiculous. They found some research that says that teachers who have master's degrees aren't any more effective at raising student achievement than those with only bachelors. Okay, if that's really true, show me all of that. I want to see it. I want to see the study. I want to see how you figured that out. Basically, what colleges, what were the teachers certified in the areas that they got their master's degree. Was the master's degree in teaching, or was it some other sort of master's degree that they could still use in the field? And then notice they use this as a sweeping statement, although their own research showed that in math and in science, it did help. So notice that a lot of times they will leave out things that are important as well. And so be careful. The way things are interpreted might be very different from the true factual information. So you always want to dig deep. The distinction between literal and ironic statements. Guys, this is an ironic statement. It's sarcastic. That was delicious. Such fine upscale Mexican cuisine. Obviously, that's not fine or upscale. And probably if you make Mexican food, would probably say that's probably not really Mexican food. It's just a bunch of mess. The reason you have to be careful for literal and ironic statements is because you may hear an ironic statement and think they are speaking literally. So watch for that. The distinction between an idea's validity and the quality of its expression. Guys, some things are said eloquently, and some things are said with a lot of substance. Some things have both, and some things only have one. All right? If it's valid, then it holds substance. But the quality of its expression is the eloquence. For instance, let's take Hitler. He said things in a way that really revved up the people in his country. Yeah, man, they all got behind him. An entire country got behind him and decided that, yes, these certain people, these Jewish people are the biggest problem. So we're going to, get rid of them, and then we need to just take over the world. What he was saying had very little substance. It was kind of ridiculous. And when we look at it now, we're like, that's crazy. What was wrong with those people? But he said it in a way, we may not say eloquent, but he said it in a way that really excited people. So guys, you've got to be careful. Some leaders, some people will present things in a beautiful way. They'll say it well, they speak well, they get people excited, but then there's very little substance behind what they have to say. It's kind of like infomercials are like that, right? Everything comes out amazing, but it's usually very little substance behind it. Well, same way for people, especially think about politicians. Listen to what they say. They say it very well. Sometimes they're not saying anything at all. The distinction between language and reality. Guys, connotation and denotation. Very, very important terms. Denotation means the dictionary definition of a word. The connotation is the way the word makes you feel, the emotional response you have to that word. The connotation of words is probably one of the biggest ways that news stories, both spoken and written, really, really show an extreme bias without seeming like they're biased. Let's look at these words. The baby's rosy red cheeks or the baby's blood red cheeks. Well, these mean the same thing, but rosy red cheeks sounds great, right? Oh, look at that baby's rosy red cheeks. What a pretty baby. If you said, look at that baby's blood red cheeks, first of all, that's just creepy. Second of all, we would almost say it's inappropriate because that has such a negative and deathly tone to it, doesn't it? The word blood. So that the connotative response we have to that word is very negative. Let's look at these. Would you want someone to say you were bossy or you were assertive? How about flexible or wishy-washy? How about ethical or narrow-minded? If I were going up for a job interview and my ex-boss didn't like me, they might say, well, they're really bossy. When a boss that really did like me might say, oh, well, they're very assertive. The boss that did not like me, oh, she was wishy-washy. The boss that did like me, she was very flexible. She, could bend with the wind, whatever they needed. My boss that did not like me would say that lady was extremely narrow-minded. But the boss who did like me would say, well, she's extremely ethical. They all mean the same thing. They're all things about me. However, the way you say it really, really, really puts a highly biased spin on it. So watch out for that. Okay, guys, how to read critically. First thing, obviously, you want to skim the work, get an idea of what it's about. Once you do that, reflect on your own views. Figure out your biases. You know you're biased. You guys are doing a really good job of kind of admitting your biases and things like that, and that's very important. So throw your biases out the window once you recognize them, and then begin to read the work. Evaluate what you read without your bias. Evaluate it just straight on and express your judgment without your bias. Just your judgment about what was said. All right? Critical listening, pretty much the same thing, guys, except that when you listen, you don't have the luxury of going back and looking carefully over what is written. So you have to carefully listen. And you'll want to write things down. If you can get a transcript of what is said or handouts from PowerPoints or anything like that, that's very important. Critical viewing is next. And I'm not sure you can see all of this, but these are two graphs that basically say the same thing. Pizza, hot dogs, and hamburgers. Pizza, hot dogs, and hamburgers. Exact same numbers presented a very different way. Let's say that I am working for an extremely large corporation and with thousands and thousands, 3,000 or 4,000 people in the corporation, and they're going to get free lunch on Friday. Well, they get an option of either pizza, hot dogs, or hamburgers. They can't have all three. They have to only pick one. And so they put it out to a vote, and everybody votes on it, and I get to collect the information. Well, I love hot dogs. Love hot dogs. So I manipulate my graphs to make it look like hot dogs were high on the list, when actually, really not that much difference. Notice here, these are done in hundreds, 100, 200, 300, 400. These are done in fives. 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. This, from between 90 and 100, this section of the graph is shown right here. So when it comes down to a group of about 3,000 people, and you only have, look guys, about what, about 15 people who say they want hot dogs. Is it fair to say that hot dogs are a shoo-in? More people definitely wanted hot dogs, and nobody wanted hamburgers. I mean, no, that's absolutely not fair. Now, this is just hot dogs, right? We're just talking lunch food. But think now about all the graphs that you've looked at, all the graphs and charts and so on and so forth, and think, how was I being manipulated? Are you looking closely enough at those graphs? Are you looking closely enough at those charts and those statistics? Look closely, guys, because they can easily manipulate you based on how it's presented. Viewing advertisements, same idea, and I think you guys really know this kind of thing. Let's say they're selling lasagna here, but they're selling more than lasagna, aren't they? They're selling happy family. Not only a happy family, but look, an all-American family. A dad and a mom and a boy and a daughter and a son. Look, they have a nice home. You can see behind them it's a nice bright home, and it looks like it's a pretty decent home. Nice cabinets and all that. They're gathered around the family table and they're eating a well-balanced meal. So many things here are being sold besides just lasagna. As a matter of fact, it's very little about the lasagna, but more about the feeling that you should get because you're eating this lasagna. So keep that in mind on the advertisements. When viewing dramatic interpretations, basically what they're telling you is everybody gets a different interpretation when they watch things. If you saw the Hunger Games, very, very interesting how people took away different themes, and that would be the dramatic interpretation. Some people said it was about, a post-apocalyptic, what's left, and somewhat it was. Some people said it was all about female heroines. Well, a little bit it was. Here's where it got interesting, though. You can ask certain people, and they think that it is promoting socialism. You can ask other people, and they think it is promoting capitalism or free enterprise. So it's very interesting how you view dramatic interpretations. The way you do it can be very different from someone else. All right, guys, your assignment. You're going to choose one of the two articles that I give you, and you're going to carefully answer each question that's in the syllabus, and you're going to format this properly. I'm going to give you another video that will go over that a little bit more, and we'll have an assignment example. But please only use one of the two articles that I give you. Thanks, guys.